Chandler, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
What's going on, Ryan? How are you?
I'm good, man. I enjoyed the article, and a mutual friend alerted me this morning about it, and, man, just laid out the case and really kind of put it into a lot of plain English how the power shifted back to Alabama.
Yeah, because a lot of people that don't remember that drive, and I have a unique perspective on it just because I went to LSU and I graduated from LSU, so I was a student around then. And, a lot of people kind of have they sort of remember that they think that play was sort of the defining moment of Alabama's season. A lot of people don't remember that Alabama lost the next week. They lost to Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M and Bryant-Denny Stadium, and obviously the SEC championship game against Georgia was really the highlight of that season. But just that drive as it pertains to this rivalry, obviously Alabama had done what it did to LSU in the national championship game in 2012. They beat them 21-0, but LSU had beaten them in that regular season. It was kind of, looking at it from a baseball 3-game series perspective, it's like this was the rubber match. This was like, if they would have won that game, if LSU would have held on, won that game, if that drive never happened, you've got a little bit of hope because that team was still pretty young, but that next year they returned Zach Mettenberger, Odell Beckham, and Jarvis Landry. They returned them in 2013 with Jeremy Hill. You would think that it gives LSU just this faint hope that they can keep up with Alabama, but that was obviously not the case. That drive, talking to A.J. McCarron about it, talking to Kevin Norwood, it was pretty insightful to read how just formulaic and how sticking to his guns John Chavis was. And they knew exactly when John Chavis was going to blitz. They knew exactly the play calls that were going to happen. It was almost like they knew exactly what was going to happen before they got on the field, and A.J. had been so bad in the second half. He was something like 1 of 7 for 0 yards. But Amari Cooper was hurt, but he and Kevin Norwood sort of clicked in the 2-minute drive. And it really is, I know there's been, a lot of game-winning drives for Alabama. Greg McElroy led one in the Iron Bowl. There's drives that kind of stick with you. But that one, there was a drive in 2014 against LSU, obviously, but that drive for A.J. McCarron, that drive for Alabama, that's one that a lot of people remember, and it'll go down as one of the, as Eli Gold said on the radio that night, one of the more epic comebacks in Alabama history.
It's always fun to get those players to go back and relive those moments. When you were sitting down with A.J. McCarron, I would probably be willing to say that that's one of the moments. I mean, I know he won national titles, but that's one of the moments that I saw A.J. McCarron wear those emotions. I mean, he went to the sidelines. That was the game that he lowered his head, and you could even see the emotions. I mean, he was tearing up because I think he'd realized that moment's one of the greatest moments in Alabama football history.
I sat with A.J. about a month ago. When he came back for his grand opening of his sushi restaurant for homecoming week, I sat in the sushi place with him for about 30 minutes, and I tell you, Ryan, he remembered every minute, down to the play calls, down to the formations. I mean, what he was spouting off, we ended up drawing some formations on some napkins at some point. We got into it. But
wow.
I did ask him toward the end, and this didn't make the story because I just couldn't find a place really to transition it easily. But I asked him, where does that drive rank for you? And he ranked that drive ahead of the national championship game against Notre Dame because he said, when we watched film on Notre Dame, we knew we were going to beat them. We knew going in there that was going to be kind of a blowout. But I think, if I remember correctly, A.J. said his number one memory from Alabama was throwing a pass to his little brother when he was a senior. His second favorite memory was the BCS national championship game against LSU. But that drive against LSU and Tiger Stadium in 2012, that was number 3 for him, even ahead of winning the national championship over Notre Dame.
Chandler, let me flip back just for a couple of minutes because I always think about Les Miles, and we're gonna feature Les Miles tomorrow on our program, and we're probably going to bring up this 2012. If he wins that game, you think there's a chance that he's still in Baton Rouge?
If he wins that game, or if he wins the 2014 game. I mean, the 2014 game, from an LSU person's perspective, maybe even worse than the 2012 game. In the 2014 game, T.J. Yeldon fumbles inside the 10-yard line with a minute left, and LSU kicks a field goal to go up, and they still somehow find a way to lose. I think if Les Miles wins either of those games, there's a strong possibility he's still the coach at LSU, because I think the one thing, maybe aside from not beating Alabama, the one thing that Les Miles that led to his downfall was that a lot of his teams had Alabama hangovers. They could not get up for the next week and the week after that, and they let that Alabama loss linger. And I think that's why Ed Orgeron his interim season last year, I think, he lost to Alabama too. Obviously, it was 10-0. But what showed the LSU administration, I think, even more than the Alabama game, was that right after that Alabama game, they went on the road and beat Arkansas pretty badly. They beat Texas A&M pretty soundly on the road after Alabama. There was no letdown. There was no hangover. And, Ed Orgeron is not shying away from this. He's saying this is the biggest game on our schedule. I think he called it a must-win a couple of different times this week. But the one thing that Les Miles can never get, he can never get his teams to rebound. He can never get his teams to refocus after Alabama, just because there was so much emphasis put on that game. But you're right on there that if they win that game in 2012. You've got Zach Mettenberger, you've got Jeremy Hill, and you've got Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry on that team. I mean, that's one of the more prolific offenses I can think of in recent LSU history. So they win that game, and the momentum that's going with that game, you don't know what happens with that season. And then, sure, Les Miles could definitely be the coach still at LSU if either of those games is sold out.
Well, I love the article, remembering Alabama's iconic 2012 rally at LSU and how it shifted the power in the series, going back to Alabama, and Alabama's been able to roll off 6 straight victories, including that 2012 BCS national title, the 2011 season. Also, Chandler, and I'm not sure if this stuck out to you, and maybe I'm trying to make something out of it that's not there, but I went back and I was listening to Coach O's opening press conference on Monday. I thought one of the things that he said about Matt Canada was asked about Matt Canada, and he literally said one of the reasons why they hired Matt Canada was to attack Alabama with all the shifts in their offensive to go up against Alabama's defense. Did you hear that? Did you catch that?
Yeah, and I mean, that's been Ed Orgeron's kind of consistent message throughout his tenure at LSU, throughout his brief tenure at LSU. I mean, he was asked about it at SEC Media Days about Alabama specifically, and he doesn't shy away from the emphasis that he places on the Alabama game. And I think, it's a more refreshing sort of take than what you got from Les Miles, because Les Miles would never publicly say it. Les Miles would just come out, this is another game. We respect them, obviously, but this is just another game on our schedule. Ed Orgeron's taken the complete opposite route. And Ed Orgeron knows to compete for a championship, to compete for an SEC West championship, to go to Atlanta and to maybe make the college football playoff. Right now, it goes through Alabama. And you can't argue that, and I think, I don't know if I would have said it the way he said it, but I think it stands to reason that it's good logic. You go hire somebody that's going to make you have an advantage over the team you have to beat. And Alabama right now is the team that everybody has to beat, either to get to Atlanta or to get to the college football playoff. So I think it's definitely a different style than Les Miles employed. Like I said, Les Miles likes to kind of shy away from it. He showed respect to Alabama, obviously, but he never built it up so publicly to be this must-win, this pinnacle of a game that Ed Orgeron done this year.
We're talking to Chandler Rome. He covers the University of Alabama for the Anniston Star as we move forward. And Chandler, I want to go back here for just a couple of minutes and look at Joe Alleva and the hiring of Coach O. And then also when we talk about current day, when we talk about the way that these coaches are going to be, this month is going to be crazy for athletic directors. What can be learned about Joe Alleva not going out and getting a big-time head coach, and maybe the strikeout with Tom Herman, that some of these athletic directors can sort of maybe learn from his mistakes and being able to go out and land a big-time coach?
Well, I think if you remember the coaching search and how it transpired, Joe Alleva just wasn't very patient. I think when, Tom, if you believe everything that you read, and, I've read some reputable people on it, and I tend to believe some of the people I've read that I find reputable, they said that Tom Herman was very much interested in the LSU job, but he said, let me just take a look at Texas, and Joe Alleva kind of flew off the handle and said, well, if you don't want to take it right now, then I'll give it to somebody that actually wants the job. And, he gave it to Ed Orgeron. So I think you're right. It's going to be a hot coaching carousel here in the SEC. It's already started with Jim McElwain, and then there's obviously a couple other guys that are very much on the hot seat. But I think every athletic director sort of approaches it differently. You've got a guy at Alabama and Greg Byrne. We haven't, and maybe will not for a while, see Greg Byrne hire a football coach. But when you hear about Greg Byrne and the way he kind of goes about coaching searches, he's got the nickname the Ninja, right? Because he just does he's very quiet, very unassuming, and then all of a sudden there's a big splash move. You kind of saw that with Brad Bohannon, because when he hired him as a baseball coach, because we sort of knew that he wanted to move quickly, but the announcement and everything like that sort of came out of nowhere. There was no leaks, no anything like that. And I think the one thing you saw when Joe Oliva was going through the coaching search with Tom Herman and with Ed Orgeron is there was a lot of leaks. There was a lot of media reports flying from both sides, leaking stuff anonymously. So I think in this day and age, especially with social media, especially with the way media is now, you've got to limit the leaks, and you've got to, just kind of proceed with a firm plan in place of what you want. Greg Byrne did that with the baseball coach. Obviously, hiring a baseball coach and hiring a football coach are on two completely different planets. But I think if you look the way Joe Oliva did it, Joe Oliva, he famously went on a Baton Rouge radio show during the search, and he proclaimed that I am the search. There was no search committee. I am the search. And, he let maybe some of his temper flare and was impatient with Tom Herman and kind of went to Ed Orgeron. There's some athletic directors that won't do that. So I think you've seen a lot of different ways to approach a coaching search, and the jury on Ed Orgeron is still out. And Joe Oliva has not, distancing himself from the implications. He said before that he knows his fate, his legacy, and how people remember him as the LSU athletic director is directly tied to Ed Orgeron.
We are talking right now to Chandler Rome from the Anniston Star. Covers the University of Alabama. He's on the one of the beat reporters covering the University of Alabama. Anniston Star is the great article that we've been talking about. Let's move to current day Alabama when we talk about this football team. What is the biggest question you have that you think they need to answer going into the month of November?
Well, immediately it's punt returner. I know it sounds kind of innocuous, but when you get into close games, I assume in November they won't be playing many 66-3 games or many 59-0 games. When you get into games that are decided by one or two possessions, you've got to have somebody back there as punt returner that can secure the ball. Because if you give Nick Fitzgerald, the ball on the short field, then you're asking for trouble. If you're giving LSU on Saturday with Darius Geis the ball in the short field, you're asking for trouble. So you've seen the punt returns not be good at all, and it's not even the return part of the game. It's that they can't catch the ball, and that's concerning. It's alarming. I don't know what they're going to do on Saturday against LSU. I've been an advocate for putting Minka Fitzpatrick back there because he seems like I've never seen him catch a punt in real time. I've seen him field some in pregame warmups, but he seems like the guy you trust the most back there just to catch the ball. So they need to fix punt returns, and then obviously they need to develop the downfield passing game a little bit more. Jalen Hurts is a better passer. He's played better in the passing game this season. You've seen it. You've seen him make progression better. You've seen him read defenses better, but they still haven't hit a lot of big bomb plays that you can hit with Calvin Ridley, that you can hit with maybe some of these freshman receivers. So you'd like to see them, take a couple shots downfield and really connect on those deep balls.
Yeah, certainly the passing attack is one of those things, and I think it's even looking beyond, and maybe Alabama shouldn't be able to do that, but as from a fan perspective here, a lot of fans go back and say that trip to Auburn, that trip if they're able to get through that SEC championship game, and then you get in the college football playoffs, that you'll need to crank that passing attack up a little bit more if they're going to try to claim number 17.
Right, and I think too, if they keep running the ball the way they're running the ball, they're going to face teams that are going to maybe try to stop the run, and they're going to have to hit some of those play action passes. I think the play action pass is something that's maybe going a little under talked about through the first 8 games of the year. Nick Saban has alluded to it a couple times in the bye week, and then right after the Tennessee game is that they need to get a little bit better on the play action passes, and that's not all on Jalen either. Sometimes it's on the pass protection of the offensive line, which has been spotty at times this year. Sometimes it's on the receivers not going where they need to go. So it's an entire team effort. I don't think this should all be kind of – I know it's kind of comes with the territory for your starting quarterback at Alabama, but a lot of, maybe unfair criticisms lobbied at, just that one guy. But we're finding the passing game is not just on Jalen. Jalen can do some things better, believe me, but I think we've seen the offensive line been kind of spotty in pass protection at times this year. Outside of Calvin Ridley, you really haven't developed much of that really go-to number 2 guy. You saw the tight ends involved against Tennessee a good bit. Robert Foster had not a great game against Texas A&M, and really he hasn't been heard from since. And, the 3 freshmen, there's really not one of them separating themselves. So I think it could stand to reason that everybody involved in this passing game can maybe get a little bit better. But again, when you're running the ball for 300 yards a game, you don't really need to have Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers back there picking apart if you can keep running the ball the way Alabama is.
Chandler, true or false? You've covered Nick Saban. You understand what he likes to do is maybe use the media a little bit to kind of get his message across. True or false? Do you think Nick Saban just found out that he was ranked number 2? I think he described it just a little bit before walking into that press conference. Do you buy that from Nick Saban? I've already called him out. I said there's no way. There's no way Nick Saban went 24 hours or almost 24 hours without knowing that he was the second-ranked team according to the college football playoff rankings.
Well, I don't know. It was his birthday, so maybe he was listening to the Eagles all night and just, never took the headphones off and wasn't able to listen. No, I think Nick Saban. I'll call him out right here. I think Nick Saban knew they were number 2 before he walked into that press conference room. Now, I believe every word he says that, they don't care. I think right now these rankings they're pretty meaningless at this point. I know it creates stories and it's a reason for ESPN to run an hour-long special with a bunch of ads every Tuesday that they can unveil the rankings. But, it's another way, though, that Nick Saban can use as motivation, because when you're beating teams 59-0 and 66-3, and you're the consensus number 1 team in the country, and you have a lot of people saying how good you are, then I don't care who you are. If you're 18 to 22 years old, you're going to see that, and some complacency is going to set in. Now Alabama's got that one thing that they can strive to get, and that's the number 1 ranking in the college football playoff. So I think Nick Saban certainly knew that his team was number 2 before walking into that press conference, and I think he was very happy that his team was number 2, because that just gave him kind of that extra thing that he can kind of dangle in front of them as motivation to go out against LSU.
Chandler Rome, connect with him on the Twitter account. It's Chandler_Rome. Find him right there. Also, AnnistonStar.com. There's no way that we could cover everything that was written in the article, remembering Alabama's iconic 2012 rally at LSU and how it shifted the power in this series. Got a lot of quotes in there from a lot of former players, Kevin Norwood, A.J. McCarron, Barrett Jones, AnnistonStar.com. Simply find that on the sports tab. Hey, Chandler, thank you again. I'll see you Saturday. I appreciate the conversation.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.